Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from my couch. As you guys can tell, I'm here in LA. I did not go to Minnesota for the game, and based on how it went, it's a bit of an eyesore. LA lost 97-87, the second lowest point total of the season for them, with the previous or the lowest rather coming also against Minnesota in December or on December 2nd, less than 2 weeks ago, when they scored 80 points. So back-to-back games in Minnesota for LA where they score 87 or fewer points. They are now 2-14 in Minnesota over their past 16 games at the Target Center. It's been a house of horrors for LA. Based on the last few years, and see you all starting to populate the chat. What is up, everyone? But yeah, so Lakers lost 97-87. They dropped to 13-12. They go from 8th in the West to 10th in the West. No LeBron James. Austin Reaves did return. So a lot to talk about tonight. But before we get started, as always, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, I'm a bit rusty like the Lakers, apparently. Please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. All right, so Lakers lose 97-87, and the story of the game, in my opinion, was the offensive struggles. So again, 87 is the second lowest point total of the season for the Lakers, and their lowest is 80. So it's been against the Wolves where they've really struggled. Like, if you look at it, they've basically scored 100 plus in every game this season. OKC, they had 93, and I think there was maybe one other one. But tonight, they shot 38% from the floor. They had 21 turnovers, which Lakers entered this game as the sixth best team in terms of limiting turnovers. Sixth fewest turnovers in the league entering tonight's game. But they have 21, and although I think the ESPN box score I'm looking at is kind of messed up, but they're outscored in the paint. They do win the rebounding battle, which I thought was interesting, based on LA being at a size disadvantage with no LeBron, obviously no Vando, no Jackson Hayes, no Christian Wood. They're playing one of the biggest front courts and front lines in the league in Minnesota. But I think Minnesota's advantages might not have popped up in the rebounding battle, where again, LA won and had 5 more rebounds and 4 more offensive rebounds. But to me, it was more in the front court kind of mashing in the paint, where if you look at it, Minnesota had 5 guys score in double figures, and 4 of them were front court players. It was Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, and Naz Reid. And of course, Julius and Naz are big parts of the offense. Gobert and McDaniels, not as much. And then Anthony Edwards led them with 23 points. But it was not the Mike Conleys, Dante DiVincenzo's, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's, or even Rob Dillingham's that were really hurting the Lakers. It was the front court guys with offensive rebounds, with putbacks, with getting out in transition and just mashing them in the paint. Rudy Gobert had 5 offensive rebounds, and I thought, he still struggles to score over smaller players, but was at least impactful from that regard. So to me, this just came down to the offensive end. And I will be touching on what the Lakers offense looked like without LeBron. And for those who have been claiming that the offense looks much better or is operating at a higher level without LeBron, this is maybe a rough, some rough tape for that take. But for me, the first takeaway from tonight's game is going to be LeBron's absence. And I'm not going to even talk about the basketball side of it yet. That's going to be a later takeaway. But for me, I mean, this has been a weird situation with LeBron. So Sam and I recorded on Wednesday. On Wednesday. and sorry, it was Thursday. We recorded on Thursday, so Lakers had already practiced, but there had not been this update yet of LeBron had not been ruled out. He had just been excused from practice yet. So Wednesday's practice, LeBron is not present, and JJ says that they had a get what you need day on Tuesday, which I had previously talked about on a previous stream, and LeBron was not there for that. Then Wednesday, they practice. LeBron is not there. He has an excused absence. He's also been dealing with this left foot soreness that started bothering him in Miami. He's questionable for the Atlanta game, ends up playing, has one of his best games of the season, but then ends up sitting out the Portland game on Sunday. And then yesterday, it was after Sam and I recorded episode 71 of Buha's block, LeBron gets ruled out officially. It had been trending that way, and LeBron's ruled out. But then we get the update from Minnesota today during pregame that JJ Redick says he does not have an idea of when LeBron James will be back. And he gets asked, do you have an idea of when LeBron will be returning to the team? And JJ just says no and adds no further context. And something to me is just not really adding up here. I'm not quite sure what. I feel like if it was just as simple as like maybe LeBron needs a little bit, if it was just like we're giving him rest for his foot to heal, like that I think that would suffice. Now with personal reasons, you never know like what, like that could be a variety of things. It could be something, more serious in terms of family or personal matter. Like I don't want to speculate. I don't think that's the right thing to do, but certainly that we've seen with players being absent for personal reasons in a variety of situations. Like there are legitimate reasons, and I'm sure whatever LeBron's reason is legitimate, but the cryptic nature of it has just been interesting, and the lack of clarity as to when he'll be back. Like the Lakers play on Sunday now, against Memphis, which is, they become one of the best teams in the West again and are looking more like themselves. So I'm not sure what's going on. I've tried to do some digging and haven't really gotten clarity in either direction. So for now, I'll take it at face value, but just at least if it is something not maybe as serious as people are I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories or whatever going around, and like if it's not something more than just he's away from the team for whatever reason, like it feels like the messaging has almost added fuel to the fire. And again, with personal reasons, like I think it's always important you respect the player and their privacy and their wishes. So maybe it's as simple as that, but just something has seemed a little off with this whole situation. So we'll see if LeBron is available Sunday against Memphis. And I think the Lakers are clearly going to need him, as I will touch on in a later takeaway. But something with this has just not quite added up in my opinion. Takeaway number 2 is that Austin Reaves returned, and I thought he provided a much needed boost, at least on the offensive end. And look, like the Lakers offense was still not good, right? AD had 23, Austin had 18, Max Christie had a career high with 15, but Austin comes back, 18 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, seemed to be on a little bit of a minutes restriction. He only played 30 minutes, but technically just under 30. I think there was a little bit of rust there. You didn't play in basically 2 weeks. So 6 for 16 from the floor, did have a couple turnovers, but I thought, especially as the game progressed, he looked more like Austin and was making winning plays and making the extra pass and just was giving this group a certain pace and verve that they've really missed with Austin out of the lineup. They don't have a lot of guys who can do what Austin could do offensively in terms of playing with pace, getting downhill, breaking down a defense, penetrating, getting to the free throw line, etc. So I thought Austin, I mean, he had the best plus minus among the starters. LA was -2 with him on the floor. All the other starters were -4 or worse, and did have 5 fouls. So I think like there's certainly an element of rust in Austin getting back into rhythm, but I thought the Lakers starting Max and Gabe, I did really love, because that combination has been particularly rough offensively. But the one thing with starting Gabe and Max was it allowed Reaves to be more on Jaden McDaniels or Mike Conley, depending on who else was on the floor or who was in for Minnesota. So felt like Austin not having to take on as much defensively and being able to pass that on to Gabe and Max. I thought that saved his legs a little bit, and you saw him hit 4 threes. Like I just thought, he really was struggling more inside the arc because I'm looking at it. He was 2 for 8 on 2-pointers, 4 for 8 on threes. Struggled in the paint a bit. Some of the finishing, but like overall 18, 6 and 5. I think you take that from Austin. Like that's kind of an average game for him, and for him to have missed as much as he did and still not be 100%. He's still playing through some pain with this pelvic contusion. So I thought Austin. Like if Austin doesn't play in this game, this is probably a 20-point blowout in my opinion, with just the juice that he provided. And then takeaway number 3 for me is going to just be like the Lakers need LeBron offensively, and I think there's been this notion and going back to last season. So LA goes 6-5 without LeBron last season, and we remember like D'Lo had some big games. I think Austin had a big game. AD, like you will obviously see other guys have to pick up the slack. And I think sometimes that can color the perception of what is actually going on. But even with LeBron having the shooting slump that he's had recently, even with LeBron, with the turnovers and just not quite looking like himself offensively, I still think the impact is clear. I would even say the Portland game, like, LA, I mean, Rui, like they really had 2 good quarters in that game, but Rui had the hot start, and then D'Lo took over in the second half of that one. But like they still only scored 107 points. It wasn't like a good offensive performance. I think it was more so a good defensive performance, and they just did enough offensively to kind of get by. Because that was another game where, remember, only AD, Rui, and D'Lo scored in double figures. So this is a similar thing where only AD, Austin, and Max score in double figures. And so Rui has a rough shooting performance, 9 points, 4 for 13. Gabe had some weird turnovers where like he was bobbling the ball and not being ready to catch passes, but 6 points, 2 for 7 field goals. Cam, 5 points, 2 for 5 field goals. I thought made an impact in other ways. Had a couple steals, a couple of assists, but offensively, still the scoring with Cam has been not, like, you still want him limited in that sense. Christian Coloco didn't take a shot in his 12 minutes. D'Lo gets 3 fouls in the first 4 minutes that he plays in the first half, gets benched the rest of the half, and then comes back in, plays 16 minutes in the second half, but he only has 5 points on 2 for 10 shooting, missed 3 threes in the final few minutes. That any one of those goes down, I think that potentially swings this game, or at least makes it more competitive down the stretch. Then Dalton connects 6 points, 2 for 5 shooting, continues his shooting struggle. So LA is partly in an offensive funk right now. Again, 38%, 28% on threes, 10 for 35 from 3. But I've not quite gotten to the offense is better without LeBron, and it, like, there are times it might be more aesthetically pleasing and like the ball movement, and because they don't have LeBron creating shots in the manner that he does, it's like, sure, there might be some more action or more ball movement to try and generate better looks. And in some cases, maybe there are better looks generated for stretches, but overall, the amount of attention that LeBron demands and his ability to manipulate and control a game, even if he's not at last year's level of LeBron, dude's still averaging 23, 8, and 9. He's still shooting basically 50% from the floor, 36% on threes. And I know the plus minus. I know the defense has been pretty poor for large stretches of the season, but at least offensively, the Lakers right now don't have a lot of reliable players, and taking LeBron out of that, you're taking your second leading scorer, you're taking your best playmaker, your best passer. And again, while it can be maybe aesthetically pleasing to see Austin do more, or D'Lo do more, or AD do more, or like a random bench guy or rotation guy kind of pop off, like, the Lakers need LeBron. So I think hopefully this, like, beating Portland, who right now is the 3rd worst team in the West, in my opinion, is the 2nd worst team because New Orleans is just so decimated with injuries. they barely got by in that game. And this game, I think, was a more accurate reflection of where LA is at without LeBron. Like, they just need him. They're not built to withstand a LeBron injury. Maybe if D'Lo was shooting more like last season, more consistently, maybe if Dalton wasn't in the slump that he is in right now, maybe if Austin hadn't missed the last couple of weeks, maybe if Gabe was more of like the Miami self, but maybe if Rui was shooting a little bit more consistently. But like with the current reality of this roster, LA really needs AD and LeBron on the floor as healthy and as just like normal as possible. So I think tonight hopefully kind of put that narrative to rest of LA's better without him. The offense looks better without him. Like, I think they've quite frankly had 2 poor offensive games in a row, and now they've been playing bad offense for a while now. If we go back over the past 11 games, they've been a bottom 5 offense. So part of that has been with LeBron, and I'm not, and I know the plus minus and the net rating and the on off stuff is supported LA being better without him. But I think in the macro of the season, I think LeBron is going to, like, the on off numbers are progressively going to tilt back in LeBron's favor, and maybe they won't be as dominant as they previously were. But I just think, at least on the offensive end. On the defensive end, JJ said this was their best performance of the season. I'm not quite there with that, but it's certainly in the conversation. And I think if I would entertain the argument that maybe they're better defensively without LeBron, depending on the opponent and like the matchup and whatever. But or at least with the level of defense we've seen from LeBron lately. But the offense, I think, like, they're clearly worse without LeBron. I think, in my opinion, tonight made that very clear. But okay, I see we got some spammers. Kick them out. And I kept the 3 takeaways tonight pretty short, because this to me was a relatively predictable loss. Like, no LeBron in Minnesota. Also down multiple front court guys. LA is likely going to lose this game. They've not been a good road team. So I was not surprised. I will say, like, JJ made the point that he was very encouraged by the defense and by the fight and the spirit and some of the progress of some of the stuff they talked about over the last few days in terms of physicality and organization. And I think we saw that. I just think when it comes down to it, like, this is not a roster built to withstand a LeBron absence against one of the best defensive teams in the league, a team that's been playing better recently, and a team that was at home. So I'm not, while I think the Lakers actually had a shot at they were down 5 with a few minutes left. Ultimately, like, I'm not really surprised by this. And I think, like, what's clear is that they need to get LeBron back, and then continue to kind of figure out the lineups, the rotations, and restructuring the offense for sure, and getting back more to the earlier season offense. But I think LeBron needs to be a part of that. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A portion of today's show. No super chats, so I am just diving right into the chat. First one from Cormac Carl Christie Jr. What's up, Max Christie? Hey, Jovan, do you think Max should get the opportunity to start over Gabe? I do. I think so. What I have a feeling Gabe will probably. So I guess I can answer this like one of 2 ways. Like, or I will answer this in 2 ways. I think so. I think Max has generally played better than Gabe the last few weeks. I think Gabe has had a couple of better recent performances by his standards, right? Like, I thought the Utah game, the Atlanta game, outside of the botched switch situation with Trae Young at the end, like, Gabe has been, I think, progressively playing better than he was earlier in the season. But he, like, the Portland game tonight was pretty rough offensively. It's just continued. Like, I think his offense has been so detrimental to the point of really negating a lot of the defensive impact that he brings. So to me, I think Max, like, I don't know if I'd say he's been as good as Gabe defensively, I would probably lean Gabe. However, Max has a size and athleticism advantage over him. But offensively, I think Max has really found a nice rhythm. He had 5 quick points tonight. Got off to a hot start, and I think has just looked more comfortable in terms of attacking closeouts, making reads, and I think has played with more confidence and assertion compared to Gabe Vincent. So I think he's just been better than Gabe. I do think there's like a slight bit of a defensive decline there, but also Max has the size, the length, the athleticism in comparison with Gabe, so that offsets some of that. I like Gabe more on like point guards, and I guess Max can guard either backcourt spot, but yeah, I mean, I think if it's between those two, I've been advocating for them to go back to the OG starting lineup, just because I think, that's been their only like high usage lineup that has worked. The other one is LeBron, AD, Rui, Dalton, Gabe, which I don't think that should be the starting lineup. So, I mean, if it's between a defensive minded backcourt player next to Austin, I would lean Max over Gabe. Now, based on what we've seen, it feels like Gabe probably has like a slight advantage there, but I would be open. Like, I don't view Gabe as highly as the coaching staff seems to. Dark Galaxy, JJ's explanation for not playing AD with Koloko made no sense. So I'm glad you bring this up, because Christian Koloko had one of the best games of his season. Like, I would say arguably, I thought the New Orleans game, he was really good, but tonight he had 6 rebounds and 2 blocks in his 12 minutes, was a team best plus 12 in those 12 minutes. And Christian Koloko, again, defensively, like he just the length, the activity, the engagement. I thought he did a really good job calling out coverages and manning the back line. And it was kind of night and day where like LA was actually winning the Koloko minutes and losing the AD minutes. Like if you look at it, LA was minus 22 in AD's minutes, and they did not share the floor together. So there was a clear contrast there. Now, I think part of that had to do with some of the guys that were out there with him. Like Cam made some good plays tonight. I think some of it was Austin and Max, D'Lo, Dalton. Like I think some of the guys, like I think some of the guys played better alongside Christian, and it was more so the defensive end where he was kind of carrying things. But I think he showed some legitimate progress. Like I've talked about him several weeks ago as like, I think the growth isn't always linear with young guys, but he has consistently shown improvement in growth. And I think there's a chance that depending on how long Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood are out, and if he continues to get these reps, and the Lakers went away from their switching as much, more recently, and now that they're playing a bit more drop, a bit more up to touch, I think that suits Christian Koloko a bit better. But if those guys are out for an extended period of time, I think that he's going to just continue to get that much better. And I would not be surprised if I think his defensive ceiling is certainly higher than Christian Wood or Jackson Hayes this season. Like we're not talking about in the future. We're talking about this season. I think he could be a better, more impactful defender overall. Now, JJ said he had one coverage where Dillingham was coming off a ram screen, and he messed up the coverage with Cam, and that was on Christian. But he also spoke at practice on Wednesday, and he talked about how important communication is. JJ said that Christian, that was the most vocal they've heard him on Wednesday at practice, and that translated into the game. But to your point about AD and Koloko, so Mike Trudell asked about Jackson Hayes and AD playing together and some of those lineups having success, and if JJ would consider using Koloko in 2 big looks. And JJ said, no, I haven't. Just shot it down. And then Mike asked the follow-up, and then JJ said that he doesn't think it's a good fit. I believe he was alluding to the offensive end. I think for JJ, clearly like spacing and the offense has been more of a priority in terms of, at least with the front court, has been more of a priority. Because I would say that with the back court, he's actually kind of leaned more on the defensive side with Gabe and Max and Cam, and like trying to figure out how to shore up the perimeter defense. But in terms of he's clearly not been a fan of two big lineups, and he even said that he doesn't think that Jackson like an AD is a great pairing either. So he said whether it's Rui or LeBron at the 4, he likes Jackson or Christian at the 5 next to one of those two, and not playing a too big look. So my read on that would just be, I don't think JJ is a fan of having another paint bound rolling type next to AD. Now what that could inform us of is like, I think that also speaks to the potential limitations. And this is also why I've been saying that the whole trade for a backup center and or like only trade for a backup center, and like that's the primary need. I've been against that because I'm like, I don't think that player is going to play that much. I think if Jonas Valanciunas gets traded to this team, I don't think he's playing more than 18 to 20 minutes in like a serious game. And that might even be high. Like, I think at the end of the day, the Lakers are not looking to go back to, or at least the coaching staff. I can't, maybe the front office wants to go back to the 2020 or 2021 style. Maybe some of the players do as well, but I don't see the coaching staff doing that. And I think ultimately, maybe there's a couple of exceptions where like a Miles Turner or Brook Lopez, those guys can space the floor. Walker Kessler is so good defensively that maybe he's an exception and they do kind of look at him next to 80 more. But I think it takes a certain caliber of player and them having an exceptional skill in terms of their rim protection or their floor spacing to warrant the coaching staff trusting them in a too big look with AD. I don't think Koloko rises to that level. I don't think Jackson Hayes rises to that level. And frankly, I don't think Jonas Valanciunas or Nick Vucevic or whoever some of these other centers have been rise to that level either. So that's my 2 cents on that. But to follow up with Dark Galaxy, and I appreciate you, two big lineups don't work because JJ has Max and Gabe out there with them. Well, that's part of the issue right now too, is like, so D'Lo had foul trouble in the first half, and clearly the coaching staff wants to use him more in a 6-man role. LeBron's out, and I think some of the offensive lineups were a bit wonky, but they gotta figure it out. Okay, we got a super chat from Keon Park. Thank you for the super chat. The great JB, great work, and thanks for the YouTube live. Lakers-wise, since LeBron not showing on practice, kind of hoping LeBron trade, I would like to see change Lakers. D'Lo Rui trade just won't be enough anyway. Well, I mean, if you're trading LeBron, you are tearing down this Lakers era, and that's the one thing. And then the other thing is, again, I think I just want to bring it up every time we have the LeBron conversation. He has a no trade clause. So LeBron will dictate, if LeBron wants to remain a Laker, he will remain a Laker. If he wants out, he has the power to not force out necessarily, but he has the power to determine where he goes. And it's not just a matter of LA having an open bidding war for LeBron and just taking the best package available. It has to be a suitor that he's interested in. So LeBron controls his future to a large extent moving forward. And the Lakers, as a star-friendly organization, will also give him that power in terms of that they're not going to burn him and trade him somewhere he doesn't want to be. And again, he controls that. But anyway, like I think even if he didn't have the no trade clause, they would not just trade him just to trade him or like trade dump him in Siberia. So I think if that's the case, it's more so going to come from the LeBron side of him wanting out rather than the Lakers pulling the plug on it. I don't see this happening. I understand the frustration right now and people want bigger changes and trades. But if you do this, like, I mean, at that point, I think you probably should just trade AD and tear it all down and get as many picks and young players as you want, because you're not like, Golden State's been the popular name thrown around. So let's just take that at face value. If you trade him to Golden State for Jonathan Kuminga, Andrew Wiggins, and like DeAnthony Melton, who's out for the rest of the season, is Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga making this team better compared to LeBron? No. It's not. Like, if the Lakers trade LeBron and get Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga, they are probably going to miss the play-in tournament. Almost certainly going to miss the play-in tournament, barring, you know, other injuries or whatever in the West. But that's like you're giving up on the season, and you're giving up on this era of Lakers basketball. And if you're under the assumption that the Lakers just can't win with this core and with this group, then maybe you do need to have that conversation as to like what's the best thing for the franchise, and maybe it is a full teardown. But I would say I'm not there yet. Again, I don't know what exactly is going on with LeBron. I'm interested to see when he returns and what some of the explanation is for the absence, if we get any. But yeah, I'm not quite there, but I understand a lot of the fan base is getting there. 3K Cash, what can the Lakers do to become a hell of a ball club? Jonas not going to help enough. Yeah, I agree with that. I think I've been saying if you can get Jonas for a second round pick or even 2 and keep the 2 firsts, I'm more open to that. And if you are making him your backup 5 and then going out and doing separate moves. But I think what's really going to move the needle is adding defensive talent, defensive playmakers. And I think LA has the offensive firepower between AD, LeBron, Austin. Maybe you can keep D'Lo or Rui, depending on what those trades look like. But if you keep one of those guys, you keep Dalton. I think Max, again, as aforementioned, is growing into his offensive role. Like all of a sudden, I think you have enough offensive talent there. This was the top 5 offense for the first 15 games of the season. Like they were top 3 offense for 40 games of last season. I don't think that's gone. I think it certainly there needs to be a greater sense of organization and attention to detail, and like going back to some of the stuff that worked. But I think if this group's going to win, it's going to be because of the offensive end. What I think they need to do is raise their defensive floor and their defensive ceiling. And I think you do that by adding guys like, I mean, if you're getting Jonas, you're probably not getting Walker Kessler, but a Walker Kessler or a Dorian Finney-Smith, a Bruce Brown, some of these plus defenders on the perimeter that all those guys have some offensive chops to some extent. At least, like, you know, Walker Kessler, at least compared to like a Jackson Hayes, is better offensively. Bruce Brown compared to like a Gabe Vincent is better offensively. Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe, you know, doesn't have the same highs. He's better offensively than Jared Vanderbilt, but he doesn't have the same highs as like Rui, but he's a bit more stable. He's a better shooter, and I think fits better as an off-ball, like catch and shoot guy. So I would say, to me, that the way the Lakers reach their ceiling is like you keep the primary guys and you build around that foundation, and then the guys that are kind of on the fringes or not as integral, I think you probably have to keep one of D'Lo or Rui. You flip those guys with a first round pick or a couple, depending on who you're getting, and you upgrade with defense and trying to get as many 2-way guys as possible, but certainly higher caliber defensive players and guys with maybe they're not quite 2-way guys, but like 1.5-way guys, 1.75-way guys, because the Lakers don't even have many 1.5 guys right now. Like they have some guys in the, like, I'm not even going to go through name by name, but like, I think you got to piece together, like some of these guys are more like 1-way guys or 1.25-way guys to keep fractioning this analogy up. But I think you guys get what my point. Juan Carlos, Dyson Daniel, please. That they missed the boat on that one. Look, I think a lot of the league missed the boat on that one. But Dyson Daniel is like a game-changing defensive player. Cormac, Carl, Christie Jr., hi, Jovan. Do you know the lineup data on the Gabe and Max lineups? They have not worked the entire season, and JJ refuses to stagger them. So, you know what? I will bring up cleaning the glass quickly just to see what it says. Let's see. This loads. Sorry. This is great streaming right now. As Dark Galaxy says, Jonas is better than Gabe, and I would tend to agree with that. Especially, I think it's more so a lack of. All right, well, this isn't loading. If this okay, loaded lineups, pulling up Gabe and Max. So on the court, Gabe, and this isn't going to be updated off of tonight, but we'll at least see what it was entering tonight. So entering tonight, Gabe and Max on the floor together are a minus 8.9 points per 100 possessions across 346 possessions. The most used lineup has been Gabe, Max, Dalton, Rui, and AD, which is a second unit lineup we have seen a lot of. That's minus 46.7 points per 100 possessions in 30 possessions. So a lot of the lineups haven't played a lot individually, but they've been together in various combinations of like point guard, shooting guard, and shooting guard small forward. And yeah, it's just not minus 8.9, not good. Although Lakers have a lot of negative lineup combinations, to be clear. Bill L, why couldn't the Lakers trade a second round pick swap with the Heat? They could have. They have not apparently been looking to trade their second round picks. I mean, they could have dumped some of these guys in the offseason, created roster spots, and they chose not to. JR Madrano, thoughts on Zaire Williams from Brooklyn as a dark horse target? Lakers need to find their small, cheap targets before the bigger trade, in my opinion. Well, I think if they're trading with Brooklyn, you might as well go get Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith. So Zaire could be a part of a bigger trade as like a throw-in. The name I really like with Brooklyn that I see as not quite a throw-in, but someone to add in is Daron Sharp. I really like his game, and I think he'd be a good fit as like not sort of a cheaper alternative to if they don't go the Jonas route. And I think the only reason not to go the Jonas route potentially, aside from like I have my concerns with his fit, although if the price is cheap enough, I'll entertain it, especially because it seems like LeBron and AD want that. I think once you trade, like you only have so many trade chips, and I think Gabe, while it's clearly not a good contract, like it's more that salary slot of you can't use it in a different trade. So my one fear would just be like, once you trade Gabe, you obviously can't trade him. Like that's salary spot is gone. So then now, like I feel like Gabe is still on the periphery of the rotation to the point where like I think he's expendable. You could play more Max, you could play more Cam, more D'Lo, and like that collective can sort of just cumulatively replace what Gabe has brought you, right? But once you trade Gabe, now if you do another trade, you got to trade Vando, who I think on some level, like they're holding out hope, can come back and be healthy and be a game changer defensively. Or you got to trade Rui or D'Lo. And I know that, especially after tonight, I've seen the trade D'Lo, trade Rui remarks, and I think I'm open to trading both of them depending on the price. But like, I think those guys are less expendable than Gabe is, right? So I think once you kind of trade Gabe and make that move, like that, like he's gone, right? And you can't use him in a different deal. So that's my. I hope I'm making sense with that, but that's my one concern with that. But Zaire Williams, I'd be open to. I'd prefer Daron Sharp, but I think that's fine. Lego Tortoise Builder, Jovan, Nick Richards or Jonas? I would prefer Nick Richards. He's a better rim protector and shot blocker. Tali Khalifa, Jovan, who would you trade both of our first round picks for in a hypothetical world where the Lakers trade both picks? So I answered this question on the mailbag, and I said that the two names I said were Jimmy Butler and Miles Turner. Now, Miles Turner is having a bit of a down season. I think sometimes guys, especially when a team is struggling, like they can kind of be going through their own sort of struggles or lack of rhythm or whatever. So I don't. I guess my point with that is like I don't know how much of that is Miles Turner specific versus like Indiana seems to just be having a rough season and they've regressed a bit and they're no longer, you know, the fun up-tempo team and story that they were last season. So I would say, like, I think Miles Turner playing next to AD, like, I think he would look better, right? Like, you could go through, sometimes guys need a change of scenery, or sometimes guys look better in certain scenarios. And I think Miles Turner would, like, it's one of the best fits in the league next to AD in terms of a shot blocker, where that guy can also has the foot speed. I mean, he's not 80, but he can at least play on the perimeter and not get entirely burned, but then also is an elite shot blocker. I know the shot hasn't been the same, but still is a plus shooter overall, a guy who could space the floor. So those are the two names off the top of my head. I think Cam Johnson is close. I feel like 2 first-round picks is a bit much for Cam Johnson. Maybe if you could keep Rui out of it, I'd be more okay with it. And then you're keeping some size in the front court. Like, I don't. Cam Johnson is better than Rui, and I'd be willing to give a first-round pick for Cam Johnson. I think 2, it just might be a little too rich for me if I'm the Lakers. But otherwise, Walker Kessler, I don't think I would give 2 first-round picks. Jeremy Grant, I would not. Bruce Brown, obviously not. And I'm just trying to go by, like, some of the names that have been out there in terms of, like, to be available. Brandon Ingram is an interesting one. I don't love the fit personally, especially because Cran just has talked about this a lot, but he has, like, a lot of D and F grades this season defensively. And I think ideally, if you're bringing in a higher usage wing, like, they need to have a certain level of defense that, like, Ingram does profile with it, with his length and his physical profile, but I don't think it's quite the defender you would need, and might, like, obviously would be a major upgrade over Rui offensively, but I think might actually be similar to Rui or even worse defensively. It's probably close, but like, not much of a rebounding defensive upgrade. And I think if they are making that big of a shift to, like, the identity, you would want a better two-way guy, in my opinion. So I'm a little bit not as high on Ingram, but though, like, for sure, Butler and Turner. Butler, yes. Turner, I would strongly consider 2 first-round picks. Cam Johnson's more borderline, and that's where I'm at. Dark Galaxy, Jonas is the only big they're getting with Gabe. Well, like, with the rumored picks of 1 second or 2 seconds, yes, I think if they're willing to put a first or 2 firsts on the table, they can get into a different conversation, right? But I would say for a non-first round pick, Jonas is probably the best big they can get with Gabe. But once you start throwing in those picks, it does open up your options. Okay. Super chat here from Eeg. Thank you for the super chat. What front office thought record would be, or what did the front office think the record would be 25 games in? Pretend they're 19-6. Front office then says good enough for no trade. 6-19, we suck. No trade. Contents. Anything in between is sold as a trade. Won't put in real contention. Loser front office. I think you bring up a good point here. What I would say is, I think if they were 19-6, I don't think they would stand pat. I think it would be more of, I think they had relatively realistic expectations of what this team was going to be, and that it was probably going to be a play-in team or a low-end playoff team. So I think they would probably think at that point we're punching above our weight and we should keep the good vibes going. And, like, we don't necessarily need, like, a massive overhaul, but we certainly need to further invest in this team. And I think, if anything, I think LeBron and AD are the type of stars that always want the roster to be better and always are thinking about, like, how to improve it. So I don't think LeBron and AD would be necessarily satisfied with a 19-6. Like, I think they'd like a 19-6 start. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of, like, I don't think they'd just be like, oh, well, the roster's fine, we don't need to make any improvements. So I think I agree. Like, the second one, I more so agree with. And I've been saying this for a long time, for those who've been following me, like, my fear with not making a trade over the summer was that they could then underachieve and then just say, well, look, this group isn't good enough. Like, what's the point of investing in them? And again, I think there's also a level, like, I was talking about this with someone today. And I was saying, like, I don't think trading for Jonas Valanciunas is really going for it. If you give up, to me, the only way I would deem the Lakers actually went for it is by giving up a first round pick, and really both. But like, you could talk me, depending on who they trade for, that if they give up a first round pick, they're actually like investing in this team. But if the only move they make is like, let's go get Jonas Valanciunas for 2 seconds, I'm sorry, that's not going for it. Like that like they could frame it however they want to frame it. They could paint it however they want to paint it. That is not going for it. Going for it is actually going out and getting, like, because there's a reason why you can get Jonas Valanciunas for that price. For if it's Gabe Vincent and a second, let's just say, there's a reason why you're able to get Jonas Valanciunas, on that contract for that price. And I think, of course, you want to be shrewd and you want to get the best values possible. But there's a reason why a Miles Turner, if he was available, is going to cost probably a couple firsts, or at least one, maybe one and a second, 1 and 2 seconds. There's a reason why Utah wants 2 firsts for Walker Kessler, because they can ask for that. And it's not like insane to ask for that type of player, where a Jonas Valanciunas, not getting 2 firsts for Jonas Valanciunas. And I had even said a first previously. And I think that in retrospect, talking to people, it was probably a bit too high. I think I even changed it to a protected first, but that's probably too high for Jonas too. So I say all this to say, like, I think the Lakers are I've been saying, are in this kind of weird zone right now where they're almost at the 30 game mark, which is where Rob Pelinka had said that he wanted to really evaluate the team. And with Memphis coming up, a couple games in Sacramento, a Detroit game, then at Golden State, then they got 3 more home games before going back out on the road. Like, this is I think it's trending in a bad direction, where maybe they make the Valanciunas trade, it doesn't really solve anything, and then they just say, hey, we made a move, we tried, right? But I think if we're being honest, like, trading for Jonas Valanciunas is not going for it. It's a measure, it's a half measure, it's an attempt to improve it, but it's not going for it. It's not going for it. So I would say, I largely agree with the point you're making here. I think if they had a better record and were still a top 3 or 4 seed in the West, I think they would be more aggressive in trying to make a move. I think they're now, though, trending in the direction of like being mediocre to below mediocre. And that's where, like, if they lose 3 of their next 4 games and are a couple games under 500, I think at that point the alarm starts to ring in terms of, are they even going to make a move? And I think maybe Valanciunas is a short-term move that they make that buys them some time for another month or so to reevaluate this group. But again, I think to actually say you went for it, you have to give up a first round pick. I don't think there's really any way around it. So we got a couple more super chats here from Matt Valento. Thank you for the super chat. Are you hearing that Washington, LA have already held talks about Jonas? Does it ramp up on December 15th? So, I mean, they've had ongoing talks I haven't heard them ramping up. I believe Anthony Irwin reported that. So, that's his reporting on that. But I mean, he can't be traded until Sunday. So I've heard that there will be more formal conversations closer to Sunday and Monday as that trade cycle starts. We did see, obviously, the Thomas Bryant trade, which technically was agreed upon before the December 15th window to be traded. But that, I think, was more of an Indiana team that was desperate to, they're decimated right now in the front line, behind Miles Turner. So they need a backup center ASAP. And I think they wanted to just get out ahead of the market and go get Thomas Bryant. I think with LA, they've been a bit more prudent. I'm sure they're probably going to haggle over the ultimate price. LA will probably want to give up 1 first round pick. Washington will probably ask for that first round pick, but I doubt the Lakers give it to them. So maybe it ends up being 2 seconds if this trade happens. But the one thing with Valanciunas is, like, I think for the Lakers, because of the way their front court is structured and the way that they want to play, that's where some of my skepticism with Valanciunas comes in, along with his defensive limitations. But there might be a team that just jumps in and like tries to outbid them, because if you go roster by roster, there have been a lot of bigs injured. A lot of teams aren't happy with their backup big man situation. So I think Valanciunas is going to be one of the more attractive options because he's a name. He's been a starter, and
also because of the price. And if you don't have to give up a first round pick to get him, there could be a bit of a bidding war there. So I think the Lakers will be armed with some attractive second round picks to throw on the table. But I would not be surprised if like maybe this ends up being 3 second round picks, right? Like I think there's a chance there's a bit of a bidding war here, and it ends up going a little bit higher than anticipated. Another one from Eeg. How many teams in the league have a top 2 better than LeBron and AD? This shit is painful, man. You have 2 top 12 players at absolute worst. I just don't freaking get it. Is it job security, politics? I'm not sure what you mean by the last part of this question. How many teams in the league have a better top 2 than LeBron and AD? That's I don't know. I mean, I will say I don't think this current version of LeBron has been a top 12 player. I think he's had stretches as a top 12 player and stretches, like some really, really good stretches, but he's obviously had more recently been a bit more up and down. But I mean, really the only 2 tandems I think you could throw in there are Tatum and Brown and Durant and Booker. And like, I think those are the 3 best duos in the league. You could order them whatever way you want. Like I would say LeBron and AD have the highest, I think they have the highest ceiling of those 3. Like when they're both on their A game, I think they both can play like top 5 level players. And I don't know if like I'm maybe a little bit lower on Booker than some in terms of like top, like I don't think he's ever really been like a top 5 guy or even in that conversation. KD can get there. KD's had a great year. Tatum, of course, is in the top 5 conversation. Then Brown has had stretches where he's been better than Tatum. But yeah, I mean, I think they're a top 3 duo at worst, in my opinion, and arguably number 1 or number 2. Okay. Did I miss a super chat? Okay, one from Wispa. It's a shame Van and Wood are not healthy. I believe we are at least a middle of pack defense with them and a much better team. I would agree with the last point. I would say, thank you for the super chat. I think middle of the pack defense is the Lakers' ceiling with this group. I just don't think they have enough defensive talent. So I would say, like, if they're 14th to 16th, I wouldn't be like shocked, but I think that's on the higher end for this group. I've been low on their defense for a while, and like, you know, going back to the summer, and I thought this was probably going to be a bottom 15 defense, and they've honestly exceeded my expectations in a negative way. Like the defense has been really, really bad. Super chat from Eeg. Let's say no trades. What does that open in summer 2025? Haynes tweet, standing pat at trade deadline with potential to acquire another star in the offseason when armed with 3 first-round picks. How'd that go? Yeah, I mean, at that point, like, I guess, so LeBron can opt out and technically take a pay cut. So maybe they do the same song and dance where LeBron opts out and takes a pay cut and they could sign somebody. And maybe that's the way that this ends up going. But, you know, I would assume that would probably be going into LeBron's last year. But, yeah, I mean, I think if they don't make a move, I would say at that point, of course, anything can happen. Anything can change. So I don't like speaking in absolutes, but at that, if they don't make a move this season, I'd be skeptical they make a big move over the summer. Like maybe if LeBron is willing to facilitate it by taking a pay cut and allowing them to sign someone, they'll do that. But at that point, it's like if they keep the powder dry with the picks this year, if anything, it's about to be LeBron age 40, turning 41, year 23, 80, 32, going to be turning 33, year 14. And you know, at that point, it's like, I think you've almost kind of admitted that you don't really believe in the group. And that's to me what it comes down to is like, I think how much do they believe in this group and how much are they willing to actually back that up with actions? Because I think there's been a lot of talk about believing in LeBron and AD, believing in this group, having the picks, being willing to use them. But at some point, the talk doesn't matter and it's about the action. And clearly they have not put, of course they're doing action behind the scenes in terms of making calls and evaluating stuff, but in terms of actual action, making moves, they have not been doing that for really going back to 2023 summer. And even then they just signed Gabe Vincent and Taurean Prince. So really we got to go back to the 2023 trade deadline for the last like real activity with building this roster. And it worked for that season, getting them to the 2023 conference finals. But there was, I think, clearly some flaws with that group that really kind of showed themselves last year and have continued to show themselves this year. So I think them kind of resting on their laurels with that has been a mistake. And to me, continues to suggest that I'm not quite sure how they believe in this team. Controversial man, do you think Rob/Genie are punishing Bron and AD for the Russ move? I don't think so, but one thing that Sam made, a point that Sam made on the last episode of Buha's Block, and a point that I've made on here before, is that I think it did fundamentally change the Lakers' approach on the trade market, where I think they've been a bit more cautious and a bit more conservative with using picks and taking risks. Like I think, even if you go back to the 2023 trade deadline, they had a lot of money to play with in terms of like they had it was basically only up from trading Russ. Like there was almost no possibility of them trading Russ and getting worse. So it was basically only upside with Russ. Then, I mean, they did the Rui trade, which was like getting like that was a good trade, right? But again, like Kendrick Nunn had been so bad and such a disappointment that it was almost like, let's just gamble on Rui. Then they flip Thomas Bryant, Pat Beverly. So I feel like they had guys underperforming on double digit or above minimum salary contracts that like they could have like they remember they at the time they were 13th in the West when they made the big Westbrook trade. And of course they did the Kendrick Nunn Rui trade a couple weeks earlier, but that period, it was like there was only upside with all the situation. Like what they're going to go to 14th, 15th. Like there was a bit of a floor there in terms of how low they could go in the West. So realistically, it was like, let's take a gamble. Let's make these trades and let's see if we could save our season. But they also were trading some pretty detrimental players in terms of Kendrick Nunn, Pat Beverly, Russell Westbrook. Thomas Bryant had his defensive limitations and hasn't really been a rotation player consistently since then. So like it was really only upside, and that's not to diminish what they did. I think it was it was an impressive job, and really I think arguably the most impressive stretch that they've had in terms of decision making outside of course trading for AD, signing LeBron, but like since then, I think it's up there in terms of like a stretch of decisions made by the front office and the organization. So I don't think they're punishing them because they going back, like they've had interest in Kyrie. They went down that path. Zach LaVine, DeJounte Murray, like they've explored other paths to get other players that LeBron and AD have wanted. They just haven't been able to ultimately come to an agreement, whether it's including Austin or including a certain number of picks or whatever. But I don't think it's punishing so much as I think it certainly did not improve the dynamic, the relationship between the two sides. But I also think it more so caused them to be a bit more cautious and prudent in terms of giving up draft capital unnecessarily. And I think in general, they've taken a more, keep coming back to like cautious, conservative, like they've played it safer rather than taking more risks. And I think I get it, but I also think the Westbrook trade was like such a exception of adding the worst fitting third star possible that even if some of these other moves they've considered, I just don't think the floor is as low as Westbrook. So I almost feel like no matter what, they can't really screw it up as much as they did with that trade. So why not take a risk and go for it? Like that's my opinion on it. Okay, I see Liberty. Hey, Jovan, what are your thoughts on getting rid of contracts of Gabe Vincent, D'Lo, and Rui to restructure in the offseason? Maybe get Ben Simmons, then let him walk away and sign free agents next season. So are you saying you're saying trade those guys for like a Ben Simmons or like a big contract that's going to expire? Is Ben Simmons? I don't know what Ben Simmons' contract situation is. Is he about to be a free agent? Let's see. And then you're saying like have cap space for next summer. Is Ben Simmons? Yeah, so Ben Simmons is an unrestricted free agent. He's making $40 million. So you're basically saying like punt on this season and create, because D'Lo's D'Lo's an unrestricted free agent. Rui has another year. Gabe has another year. Vando has 3 more years. So it's an interesting idea because again, you're basically punting on the season and you're saying, let's go sign guys next summer with cap space. My pushback on this would just be that free agency doesn't necessarily operate the same way that it used to. And the Lakers still have a lot of money on the books. So I don't even know how much I'm trying to like. I don't think they'd have that much off the top of my head without really diving into the cap sheet. So that would be my one thing is like, I also don't love the idea of basically just punting on the rest of this season, which I think this trade would be doing. But if you could find a guy like, so for example, like Jimmy Butler, I think is a different version of this where Jimmy Butler is going to be an unrestricted free agent unless he signs an extension, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. There's different intel and reporting on that. But if you trade for Jimmy Butler, you get a much better version of Ben Simmons on a similar contract. And so like you're taking the risk of can we win with Jimmy Butler? Like what does that look like? How's the fit? And then if it doesn't work, you at least then he walks and then you potentially have some cap space or some cap flexibility to kind of pivot and figure out kind of the next thing. So I'd prefer that route over like a big expiring that can actually help you versus a Ben Simmons who like, yeah, he's had some stretches, but ultimately I said Russ was the worst fitting third star. Ben Simmons is no longer a star, but I would have had him a close second in terms of worst fitting just because there's some overlap with LeBron in terms of big forward with best with the ball in the hands, like also can't shoot. So I know you're using Ben Simmons more as like a cap cleanser here to get some of these contracts off, get more flexibility. I get that. I guess I would just say I'd prefer to split the difference and bring in a better player who you could either keep or if they walk, you have the same flexibility, but they also make you better in the short term. Dark Galaxy, why would you trade first round picks to open up cap space? Well, I would assume in a Ben Simmons trade, it probably wouldn't be a first round pick. I would assume that would be like a second or a couple seconds. I'm with you. I would not do that. Jimmy, I think if this is a reference to Jimmy, I think Jimmy is a different conversation because he does help you in the short term. He gets you that third star, and there's a possibility you can keep him as long as everything goes well. So Jimmy, I think is a different conversation. Okay. Couple of super chats. Gonna go about 10 more minutes and try and keep it to a legit 10 more minutes. Angelico Azarad Rezo, with all the talk about the issues with the league losing interest, they should help the Lakers secure a trade for a young star like Trey or De'Aaron Fox. The league needs the Lakers to be competitive now and for the future. Why think so small? What about Luka, Ant, Wemby? Like, aim higher than those two names. I mean, I'm actually like I'm speaking of jest here, but I'm actually with you in the sense of like I think I am more of a big market person in terms of the health of sports leagues, but also the NBA, because that's the one I cover. That's the one I love. But I think the league is better when the Lakers are good, when the Celtics are good, when the Knicks are good, when the Bulls are good. I think the Warriors have now elevated into that class with the fan base that they've established over the last decade plus. So I think when the big market teams are like, I'm going to be really interested to see what the NBA Cup ratings are now that the Lakers aren't in it. And it was Indiana, and was it Indiana Milwaukee was last year as well, or was it? It wasn't Indiana Boston. I forgot who Indiana played in the semifinals. But I'm really interested to see what like OKC Houston does in comparison with the Lakers. I would assume it's going to be lower. Now maybe that has to do with the league ratings dropping in general, but I think it's best for the league, especially the Lakers. Like, they're the biggest fan base, most international brand and team, and like the Lakers are Lakers. So now I'm not saying they need to be gift wrapped a star. I don't think that's how this should work, but I think for the league's sake, it is good for them to have the Lakers be good and for the Lakers to not be tanking. So or just having a down period. So yeah, I'm with you, but I think the Lakers are going to be trying for someone higher than that. Controversial man, what do Rui, Gabe, Hayes, and a first, or would you do Rui, Gabe, Hayes, and a first for Hunter and Nance? Yes. Hunter's shooting 45% on threes, and I don't think that's going to sustain, but I was really impressed with him in that game in Atlanta. I like DeAndre Hunter. I have for a while. And then Larry Nance, I think it's weird. I don't know if any of you play fantasy basketball, but I play fantasy basketball, and Larry Nance is always like one of the top ranked guys. So I'll go look at his recent game logs to kind of see, like, should I pick him up or why is he available? And then you see like Atlanta dusts him off every like 2 weeks, and he'll have like a really good game. Like, I think his last game was like 16 points and several blocks and steals. And like, he's versatile. He's a switchable defender. And yet for whatever reason, they don't really play him. So I like Larry Nance. And I think, yeah, I mean, I do like DeAndre Hunter. Like, yeah, I think, yeah, I think I would do that. L.A. Hey, Jovan, in your opinion, if Braun is out for Sunday and not at the game, would that make you think it's more likely he's applying pressure for a roster upgrade or wants out? I don't think it's a sign that he wants out. I have wondered about the roster upgrade part. Now, what I would say with that is that I think that the best way for him to apply pressure for a roster upgrade is for him to play well and for the team to win. So I think him not being available and the team potentially losing without him. In the Minnesota game, to be honest, I think they probably lose even if he plays. But the Memphis, I think, is a winnable game, especially since they're at home. And I think LeBron's presence will swing that in either direction. So I'm not ruling it out. I'm not saying, like, again, I don't know. I've been trying to kind of wrap my head around all this and figure it out. But I'm sure on some level, like, he does want the roster to be upgraded because he wanted that going back to the summer, right? And he wanted them to go after those guys, James Harden, Klay Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas, DeRozan, and that didn't happen. They basically kept the same roster, and it's not like the result, like, if they'd stayed on the like 10-4 path, I think we're having a different conversation here. But because they're now 13-12, I don't think you can point to standing pat and being like, well, that was the right move. So I don't think his opinion has changed on the roster. Now, is this some type of tactic? Maybe. I can't rule it out. But I don't think it's a sign of if he wants out, because I think it'd be, again, if he wants out, I think he would just ask out, and he's got the power to apply pressure that way, and he's got the no trade clause. So I don't think it's that. I think it's potentially the first thing, but again, I also question that because I'm like, I think the best way is just for him to go kick ass and win games and put the pressure on the front office that way. Cade Norris, so he asks, hey, Jovan, what's your take on the LeBron situation? Seems weird there's no update on anything with him. So I talked about this with my first takeaway. You might have missed it, but in summation, like I do think it's weird. I think the way it's been presented to us has been weird. And with personal reasons, personal matters, there's always, I don't want to speculate because I don't think that's right. But oftentimes, if you look at times that other players have missed for personal reasons, there's often a legitimate reason, right? So I think it would be one thing if it was just the left foot soreness and it was like, hey, he didn't make the trip to Minnesota because he's just resting his foot. Like there was no need to go be on his feet, fly, be in like slight elevation. I think Minnesota is technically like a little bit more elevated than that. Like just deal with that and the cold and all that stuff. Like there's no point for him to do that when he needs to be resting his foot, letting it heal. If it was just that, I think that would be one thing, and I would take that for what it is. But then when you throw in he hasn't been present because of personal reasons, and then you throw in like you don't know if he's going to be available, and then now it's, well, we don't know when he's coming back. Like that's where this gets a little murky, because again, if it's like he's just at home resting his foot, we hope he plays Sunday, but we're not sure. For now he's day to day. That kills the storyline, the narrative. Like that, like we're not talking about it right now, or we're talking about how are they going to try and beat Memphis on Sunday without LeBron. But once you throw in personal reasons, there's no additional explanation, and you throw in like we don't know when he's going to be back, that just opens up all these possibilities for people to have conspiracy theories and kind of talk through the different things and whatever. So it's like, I just, and look, again, with personal reasons, you always have to be sensitive to the player and whatever they're potentially going through. And if it's a personal matter or a family matter or whatever is the case, maybe it's as simple as like he just needed a break and it's been like he just needs a couple days off or whatever. But it certainly, I'd say the way it's been handled has only fanned the flames and made it into more of a thing than it might be. We don't know yet. It could be something big. It could not be. But I would say there was a way to kind of shut this down. That was not the way it's played out. And because of that, now speculation is going to run rampant. And I'm not going to speculate, but yeah. All right, going 5 more minutes. Lloyd Ab, is Obi Toppin available? If so, trade Rui in 2 seconds, a first and D'Lo and AR for Cam and Finn, and a first for Nick and Trey Mann. Sorry, that's a bit hard to keep up with everything here. I like Obi Toppin. I don't know what his numbers are this season off the top of my head, but I personally would not give up AR for the Cam, Dorian Finn, Finney Smith package. I think that you don't, and I'm about to touch on Austin and the whole third best player thing, but you don't have a true number, like make what you will about Austin, but you don't have a true number 3 now, or in this case, offensively. Like I guess it becomes Cam Johnson, but I don't think I trust Austin more offensively based on what we've seen. Okay. Sean Parker. So, Jovan, did you see what a Western Conference scout said about AR being our third best player? Yeah. And what I would say to that is, I think with all these things, it's always very contextual, because I think, like, for example, if you take LeBron and AD off this team, or if you get a time machine and you go backwards and you get the 2019, 2020 versions of LeBron and AD and put them on this team, or put them on last year's team, or the 2023 team, although AD's arguably been as good, I would say I still would put 2020 AD over any of these recent versions. I think he's been like close to that level, but not quite at that level. Certainly not as athletic and explosive as then. If you had those versions of LeBron and AD, I mean, who's the Lakers' third best player on that 2020 team? KCP, Kuzma, Caruso, Rondo, Dwight, like Danny Green, like, you know, honestly, like night to night it changed, but I think most people would probably say Kuzma or KCP. I think I would lean KCP, but again, you could pick Caruso, Rondo, whoever on like average was their third best player. I think Austin Reaves is better than those. Like, this version of Austin to me is better than those guys, but they had a certain infrastructure, a certain defensive identity where it didn't necessarily matter who was like the third best player. It was like the collective made it so. So I say that to say that with Austin, I think, are there scenarios in which you might not want him, or probably don't want him as your third best player? Sure. Like, I think, and that the scout referenced OKC or Boston, like, it is like, if he's on Boston, he's their sixth best player, right? Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, White, Holiday. With OKC, he's at best their fourth, but might even be fifth, depending on how you view certain guys. So, like, certainly there are teams where he would not be a top three guy, and that's fine. But I would say if Austin's your third best guy, you do need certain guys around him, and maybe it's like a situation where the fourth and fifth guy aren't that much worse than him. Like, I think the problem right now for the Lakers is he's their third best guy, and there, in my opinion, is a pretty big gap between him and whoever you want to put at number four. Like, in theory, D'Lo's number four, but D'Lo's been so up and down this year that I think the gap between those two last year compared to this year is ginormous, or compared to that gap last year. Like, last year I thought it was much closer. This year I think there is a more notable gap between those two in terms of ability and production. So I don't inherently disagree with what they're saying. I think he's probably best suited overall to be like your fourth best player, but I think there are scenarios in which if your two best players are at a certain level, like the LeBron and AD are capable of being, I think you could, like, I mean, we saw it in 2023. He was their third best player. They made the conference final. So I don't view it necessarily. I don't fully agree with what he's saying. I get the pushback. I get the counterpoint. I think with the current way that this roster's set up and the way that AD and LeBron have played as like the two best players, I don't think they can win a championship with Austin at the number three in this current configuration. But I think if you can restructure the roster and put more defensive pieces and athletes and length around him, and LeBron and AD play the way we know they're capable of playing, then I think it's more of a conversation. So I saw that. I don't fully disagree. I don't fully agree. But I think with this, it's very nuanced. It's very much about what do your top two guys look like, and what do guys like 4 through 7 look like. And even putting D'Lo aside, like, Rui's been up and down. Dalton's been struggling. Gabe has been primarily a one-way guy. Jackson, Vando, Christian have been injured. So I just don't think they have the 4 through 7 pieces anyway to support Austin as a number three. Like, I think he needs support as a number three. I don't think he's not like a blanket, like, just plug him in as a number three anywhere and he's going to be fine. But I do think, based on the prior success we've seen with this group, based on him playing better in the playoffs, I think there are scenarios in which he could be a number three. I don't think the current infrastructure supports that. So I guess it's kind of like a half agree, half not, if that makes sense. Another super chat from Keon Park. LeBron wants out and goes to the Warriors, and Lakers get Wiggins, Kuminga, etc. Should the Lakers keep AD and try trading Wiggins, Kuminga, D'Lo, Rui, Gabe, etc., and get a second star, or just trade AD and start over? So part of this would have to be, what does AD want, right? Because I think if he wants to remain a Laker, of course you could just trade him, but I think the Lakers, the way that they operate is star first, and I don't think they're going to trade AD if he doesn't want to be traded. So my guess would be more the first part of your question, in terms of, can you package Kuminga, Wiggins, D'Lo, Rui, Gabe, and get that second star? I'm not sure of the trade restrictions in terms of acquiring guys then repackaging them. I think there might not be any, but again, with the new CBA, it's a bit confusing. So they could technically try and reroute those guys, but they might have to wait until the summer when they can get access to a third pick and then make a bigger move over the summer. They'd lose D'Lo because he's an unrestricted free agent, but they'd have the rest of the guy. Well, Kuminga's got to get paid, so that's the other thing with Kuminga that's a bit of a wrinkle there. But I think they try and go get that second star rather than tear it down, unless AD asks out / wants out. Okay. A lot of divisive. I see my opinion on Austin was very divisive in the chat. Sean Parker, I will do 3 more questions. Sean Parker, Jovan, do you think our laziness is due to our stars not getting back on offense / defense? I think that's part of it. I've talked about this before. Like, to me, it's not. At some point, you have to stop, or at some point, it's not a coincidence that the Lakers have ranked in the bottom 10 in fast break points allowed in 4 of the 5 LeBron and AD seasons. And the one year they didn't, they were 17th. So they've been below league average in all 5 seasons, and they've been bottom 10 in again, 4 of the 5. And I believe in 3 of those, they've been bottom 5. So, and the 2 constants over that entire stretch have been LeBron and AD. And I think there is an element of just those guys not always getting back in transition. And the point I will defend with them is, like, it is a lot, especially for AD, to ask him to be such a high usage guy and man the defense and always be running end to end, getting back. Like, I would say a guy like Jokic, I think, somehow does it. And in theory, he's not in as good of shape or shouldn't have as good of conditioning as AD. And obviously isn't the defender that AD is, but I think from like an effort perspective, I think Jokic like hustles back. Like, I mean, when they play the Nuggets, there's lots of times Jokic beats AD up and down the floor, and it just doesn't really compute, right? So I would say it certainly has an impact, right? Because I think those 2 guys set the tone. They're the 2 clear leaders. They're the 2 clear best players. And like, you know, it just, I think it does set a certain tone where it is a little bit more acceptable maybe to take possessions off. The other part, though, that I would say is, I just think the Lakers have a lot of low motor guys. And I've talked about this before, but I just don't think they have a lot of guys who always play hard all the time. And it's kind of a team-wide problem. And I don't put that fully, like, I think maybe LeBron and AD, and they're sometimes not always playing super hard, can exacerbate that with the rest of the group. But I think this is kind of a team-wide thing that they don't always, like, they have certain guys who will float in game. And I thought it was interesting, like for whatever it's worth, JJ was asked about the physicality tonight, because physicality has been a big talking point for him throughout the whole season. And even tonight, he was talking about Minnesota and their physicality and how they're able to push the Lakers around. And someone asked him, have you seen growth with your physicality and specifically defensively? And like what do you make of that progress? And he's like, with some of our guys. And then he pointed out, he's like, some of our guys have gotten better. And he kind of left it at that. And then he went on to mention, he was like, Gabe, Max, Austin, and Rui. Those were the 4 guys he singled out as playing with physicality and improving in that regard. I guess going by the rotation, he did not mention AD, D'Lo, Cam, Dalton, or Christian. Those are the only other 5 guys who played. So make of that what you will, but I thought that was interesting that he specifically kind of singled out like only a few of the guys and then named them or said attributed the progress to only a few players, then named them. So I don't. That's not to say that the other guys don't play with physicality, but I just thought that was interesting that JJ's been more transparent in terms of like his frustration for sure. Android Andres, can we trade for Westbrook? You know what? I said earlier in the season, time is a flat circle, so why not? Let's. I would love to do that stream and see how much everyone's melting down, including myself. Bloodhound said 80 to the Thunder would make the most sense. That's kind of where I'm at. If I'm looking at potential suitors, I think if you're the Thunder and you have a million first round, I think they have 14 tradable first round picks, if I'm not mistaken. If you send the Lakers, and this of course is under the assumption that 80 is open to being traded and the Lakers are tearing it down. If you get 5 or 6 picks from the Thunder for AD, and then you have Chet, AD, J-Dub, and Shea, I think that's the best team in the league. And if you guys can't tell, I was kidding with the Russ trade. I do not think the Lakers should trade for Russ. I do not think Russ wants to be back. He was getting booed last time. Lakers Nuggets. He was going at it in the crowd. Let's be clear. Crusoe over Wallet. Appreciate the work you do, Jovan, even when I don't always agree. I appreciate that, and I hope that, like, as you guys hopefully can see, like I try to be thoughtful. I try to be civil. Like I think this is like a forum for conversation, and we're not always going to agree. And sometimes even I'll listen back and I don't agree with something I said, and I change my opinion. Like I try to be flexible with it. I'm never really married to an opinion, but curious though, what opinion did I say tonight that you didn't agree with? I'm guessing it's the Austin thing. Maybe I seem to upset some people with that one. Jay, always with the great quips here, saying, most importantly, Jovan, you really take good care of your skin. I try. Sean Parker, Jovan, can you give some encouraging words before leaving? I think this is a great place to end the stream, so I will give you some encouraging words. Words of encouragement are, as I said, or with the previous question, Lakers have arguably the best duo in the league, at worst top 3, and I think that always gives you a chance. And I know they've been in a rut here. I do think the cluster, it's not just that they're injured, but it's the cluster of injuries. They're missing half of their front court, including their best perimeter defender, best wing defender, and basically their 2 backup centers. Like Koloko has been playing better, but he's also had some down shifts, and like we've seen several games where he plays one shift in the first half and gets benched for the second half based on his performance. I don't think you would necessarily see that if Jackson Hayes or Christian Wood were playing. So I think there's still, the season's not over. I know people want to say that or write the Lakers off. They're still in the play-in. It's a cluster of teams there. So 1 3-game winning streak and you're back at the 6th seed. And, you know, I think we're having a more optimistic conversation. What I will say is I think they need to make a move. Maybe in the short term, it's Jonas Valanciunas upcoming here in the next week or so and shore up the backup center spot. And that, you know, kind of helps for now. Although, again, if Koloko is going to play like he did tonight, like I think you're fine with that. But get some more interior size in there, play bigger, and they can stay afloat for the next couple weeks. I think that opens up the possibility for them actually making a bigger move or two and this team having a legitimate shot. So I've said, and I'm seeing it now in the chat, like entering the season, I said that I viewed this group as like a 5th or 6th seed. I haven't necessarily changed that opinion. I do think maybe the floor is a little bit lower than I anticipated with some of these recent losses to good teams. As I said on the pod with Sam, Lakers have the worst record in the West among the play-in teams against teams above 500. They just lost another game to a team above 500, so they're now 5-11, which is the worst record in the West. So that's a bit concerning, but we're trying to be optimistic here. So what I would say is, like, as long as you have LeBron and AD, Austin's back. Theoretically, they should start to be getting back Jackson, Christian, Vando over the next few weeks. I mean, I don't know. And the one thing is they're going to be in it. They don't, after they get back and they're flying back to LA now, they're going to be in the state of California until January 4th. So they're going to be in the state of California for going on almost 3 weeks. They go to Texas for Houston and Dallas. They come back. They're in the state of California again for almost 3 weeks with only road games against Golden State and the Clippers. So they have a stretch here over the next month, like 5.5 weeks, where they can start to bank home wins, even against good teams, and start to pad the record and get it into like early to mid-January, closer to where you want it to be, and potentially make a trade. So that's what I will say in terms of possibilities. Like they have the 2 picks. There's been some bright spots. Dalton's been a bright spot. He's going through a slump. That's not going to last. Austin's back. I think D'Lo has largely played better. He still had some rough games, but better than he was earlier in the season. I think Rui started to bounce back. Max has been playing the best basketball of his career. Gabe's been, like, individually, there's actually been a lot of positives. It's just been it's sort of like 3 guys play well, then another 3 guys don't. And I think just figuring out a way to get everybody on the same page and collectively playing well at the same time, that's what's going to lead to this group righting the ship and getting back into a winning groove. Keon Park could not reject the super chat. So he says, last one, who's winning the NBA Cup? I will say, I think it's going to be one of the West teams. And I will say the Rockets have looked really good. I'm going to say it's OKC because I think OKC is the second best team in the league and the best team in the West. So I will pick OKC, but I would not. I like the concrete prediction I will make is I think it's going to be one of the 2 West teams. I think Houston, they've got that. Like Sam Amick just wrote about it today of like no friends on the court for Houston. Like they've got this certain vibe and you know, they're not fun to play against. So I would not be surprised if Houston beat OKC, but if you are holding me to a prediction, I will say OKC beats Houston and wins it all. And beats I'll say beats the Bucks in and breaks Darvin Ham and Taurean Prince's unbeaten streak in the NBA Cup. All right. Commenting, Jovan, can you ask JJ why they don't get enough threes up their bottom five? Yeah, but I think at this point, it's kind of who the Lakers are. But all right, I went a bit over as expected, but I'm going to wrap here. I appreciate you all for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back on Sunday after the Lakers-Grizzlies game. There's a chance I live stream tomorrow. If I don't live, I'm either going to live stream tomorrow or Monday. Had a bit of a crazy week, was out of town, spending time with my son during the break, so I didn't get to live stream this week. But chance I do it tomorrow. If not, I will do it Monday. Lakers are off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll practice Tuesday and Wednesday, but either way, it'll be either tomorrow or Monday. I'll probably post a community note tomorrow morning if I am going to do it, but be on the lookout for that. I'm leaning more toward Monday, but we'll see how I feel tomorrow. But that'll do it. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I will talk to you very shortly.